Tiffany Wong with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. In just 1 week, voters will decide whether they support restarting the Ma'anshan nuclear power plant in southern Taiwan. In Taipei, environmental groups are standing together against the referendum.
这个非核家园其实是台湾历史的一个共识，从当年裁定核电厂40年的运转执照，到后来除役过程里头呢，其实大家都有共识，就是不愿意让核电厂如期除役，所以我们今天面对的是历史共识的一个结果。
Taiwan's last nuclear power plant shut down in May this year, meeting the ruling Democratic Progressive Party's target to phase out nuclear power by 2025. But concerns over energy security prompted the opposition Kuomintang and Taiwan People's Party to campaign for a public opinion vote on whether to restart the Ma'anshan plant.
请大家出来投票，参与这一场台湾能源转型重要的战役。 用全国人民的意志，清楚的告诉民进党政府，清楚的告诉赖清德总统，多数的民意是什么？让民进党学会对民意谦卑，让民进党知道人民才是这个国家的主人。
The referendum will be held alongside recall votes for 7 KMT lawmakers on August 23rd. In cross-strait relations, Taipei is making it harder for Chinese people married to Taiwanese to take up residency here, and it's adding restrictions on Taiwanese people who want to regain their legal status. Cadence Carranza reports.
An upcoming change to Taiwan's cross-strait law will make it harder for Chinese people married to Taiwanese citizens to settle permanently in Taiwan. Commonly known as Chinese spouses, there are over 360,000 of these individuals in Taiwan. Previously, to settle in Taiwan and to get a national ID card and be afforded all the rights of a citizen, they only needed to give up their household registration in China. Soon, they will also have to submit proof of having given up their Chinese passport, which may make settling in Taiwan much harder. The change in rules, part of a plan by Taiwan President Lai Ching-te, who earlier this year introduced a scheme to counter Chinese influence and security threats in Taiwan, specifically saying Chinese people should have to relinquish their passports to settle in Taiwan. The upcoming change has also set off some back and forth across the strait this week, with China's Taiwan Affairs Office criticizing it and warning Chinese people against ruining their Chinese passports in order to try to comply with the rule.
对于故意损毁中华人民共和国护照的有关组织和个人，我们将依法追究其法律责任。
But Taiwan's Mainland Affairs Council says it won't compromise on the law.
从我们国家的立场你要加入中华民国国籍，那你就要遵守中华民国的法令这个是不可变动的原则那我们对于国台办昨天这样的说法，基本上是在恐吓我们表示谴责，但是我们会照我们的法令走。
Taiwan's Interior Ministry has also proposed an amendment making it harder for Taiwanese people who lost their legal status to take up a Chinese ID card to regain Taiwanese citizenship. That would include things like proving they'd made significant contributions to Taiwan and that they hadn't been involved in Chinese political propaganda. These amendments, part of steps the government says will counter intensifying Chinese infiltration in Taiwan. Heng Xu and Cadence Carranza for TaiwanPlus.
Prosecutors in Taichung are investigating a Chinese lawyer who appeared in court without a license to practice law in Taiwan. Lawyer Liu Rongfang tried to represent an Austrian e-commerce platform Wednesday in a civil case against a Taiwanese firm. An attorney representing the firm has objected, saying people who practice law without meeting Taiwanese criteria could undermine professionalism and threaten national security. The Justice Ministry also says the law is clear about who can practice law in Taiwan.
只要涉及台湾法律相关的事务，他是不能够在台湾执行相关的律师业务。我们核准来之后，他唯一能够执行的是涉及到他自己取得国家律师国的这个律师的相关的法律事务，或者是涉及到国际法上的律师事务。
If the Chinese lawyer is found to have violated relevant laws, he could face up to a year in prison and fines of up to 5,000 US. Taiwan's legislature has passed a law allocating up to $2 billion for relief and recovery in the country's storm-ravaged areas. The funds are to be used on infrastructure projects for roads, communications, energy, and water management systems. Households affected by significant flooding will receive between $600 and $1,000. In July, Typhoon Danas tore through areas of southern Taiwan, with torrential rainfall later in the month worsening the devastation. Cash handouts of around $300 per person could be coming in the next few months to help Taiwan cope with U.S. tariffs. On Thursday, the cabinet approved an opposition Kuomintang proposal for the payments. That's a reversal from its earlier rejection of the plan over concerns about borrowing and whether lawmakers overstepped their authority. The payments will not exclude wealthy individuals, but it's unclear whether non-citizen residents will be eligible. U.S. chipmaker Intel is reportedly in talks with Washington about a possible government stake in the company. A Bloomberg report says the deal would help shore up Intel's planned complex in Ohio, which has repeatedly been delayed. The company has struggled financially in recent years, with a new CEO, Lip Butan, taking the helm in March. Intel shares closed up more than 7% on Thursday. The company refused to comment on the talks, while a White House spokesperson called discussion about any deals speculation. For more on what a U.S. government stake in Intel might mean, reporter Chris Gorin spoke to Dave Nicholson, chief advisor and senior fellow at the Futurum Group.
U.S. chipmaker Intel hasn't confirmed the Bloomberg report that Intel is in talks with the U.S. government to take a stake in the company. But if that's true, it would be a major shift when just last week, U.S. President Donald Trump was calling for the resignation of Intel's CEO. So how big of a comeback would this deal be for that relationship?
But yeah, it would be quite the turnaround if this happens. I think if you look at the broader context, though, remember the Biden administration under the CHIPS Act was essentially exerting indirect control over Intel with the strings that were attached to the money that was to be delivered. So this isn't completely unprecedented, but in the direct way that the rumors are talking about, it's very new.
Even before the calls for resignation, there was some tension between Intel and the White House. Trump has floated the idea of repealing the CHIPS Act, which would send nearly $8 billion to Intel. If the government does take a stake in the company, do you think the likelihood that they will actually get that money goes up?
I think the likelihood goes up dramatically. Yeah. I think that if the goal is to have the backstop of the federal government and the funding that was promised from the CHIPS Act and more, then this would be a very, very good deal for Intel. The question would be, would this be something where it would be temporary, much like the bailout of General Motors, versus Intel being a strategic part of our strategy for AI moving forward, and a good partner to partner with from a federal government perspective?
Well, there's another firm that's supposed to get CHIPS Act money, and that's Taiwan's TSMC. They're slated to get more than $6 billion for their Arizona facilities. Now, they say they don't need that money, but if I'm sitting at TSMC headquarters, and I've just made the largest direct investment in U.S. history, and I hear the U.S. government is taking a stake in my competitor, Intel, how am I feeling right now?
You wouldn't be feeling very good. And in fact, there are a lot of American companies that were very upset by the gesture toward Intel. There's a sense that Intel made its own bed and that it should suffer the consequences of whatever failures it might have had along the way. There's this concept of being too big to fail, too important to fail. For example, there were rivals of Intel who flatly said, Taiwan Semiconductor beat Intel at certain games. That's why we choose to use TSMC instead of Intel. Why are we now subsidizing Intel? So no, there will be a lot of people who will be upset, companies that will be upset by this.
All right, Dave, big picture. What's the main question in your mind about this potential Intel deal?
Is the United States pivoting more in the direction of public-private partnerships like we're used to seeing in Europe and in some Asian countries that are almost a cultural anathema in the US at this point. A lot of people would be absolutely opposed to this. The big question that's at hand here is AI sufficiently different to warrant this different approach? Is this just a one-off, or does this signal a fundamental change in the way government and industry will behave in the US?
That was Dave Nicholson of the Futurum Group speaking with Chris Gorin. Russian President Vladimir Putin says he wants to reach a nuclear arms control deal with the United States during a summit with U.S. President Donald Trump Friday. The two leaders are meeting in Alaska as part of efforts to end the Russia-Ukraine war. In his first public statement since the summit's announcement, Putin praised the Trump administration's peace efforts, but he said a broader peace agreement with the U.S. and within Europe could require further talks on what he called, quote, strategic offensive weapons. The U.S. and Russia have a deal on limiting nuclear weapons, but it's set to expire in February. As Taiwan becomes a super-age society, people are finding ways to keep the growing number of older people engaged after retirement. Aichi looks at one business in southern Taiwan, bridging the gap between old and young local residents.
Retiree Su Huang Chougui works as the manager of this unique shop in Tainan in southern Taiwan, showcasing her cooking skills in every dish she prepares for customers from the local community. She says she enjoys working at the shop, which brings together people from both older and younger generations.
我觉得他这个观念很好，让那个我们这些年纪大的有一个活动的地方、工作的地方。
The business model behind the shop seeks to offer solutions to Taiwan's aging society, building connections between young and old, enabling them to grow businesses in ways that foster harmony within their communities. Founder Lu Zhibang says the road to success wasn't easy, but was worth it in the end.
之前用社造的角度去推，反而很难。可是用这种同才的关系或伙伴的关系去互相影响。 反而是在这当中去得到的一个很棒的收获吧。
The collaboration covers a range of activities, not just food, from weaving classes to musical performances. With less focus on profit, people are able to explore how they want to spend their time, and the founders say the benefits are mutual.
很多人都会觉得说，我们在帮长辈圆梦，其实长辈也在帮我们圆梦，让大家一起去寻找一个高龄化社会之后，我们想要的一个。 好的，在地的社区生活是怎么样？
As Taiwan's population rapidly ages, its self-haired economy is projected to exceed $100 billion in 2025. Initiatives like this one are emerging to keep seniors active and engaged. Howard Chan and Aichi for TaiwanPlus.
Taiwan speed skaters have nabbed 2 more silver medals at the World Games in Chengdu, China. Zhao Zuzheng came second in the men's 5,000-meter point race, behind Paraguay's Julio Cesar Morena Ortiz. In the women's category, Liu Yixuan clinched silver in the 500-meter plus D sprint after edging out her Belgian competitor Fran van Hoot. The results come after fellow Team Taiwan speed skater Guo Liyang took home silver on Thursday in the men's 200-meter dual-time trial. Their wins bring Taiwan's medal count to 1 gold, 4 silver, and 4 bronze. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, Finland's beloved Moomins are turning 80. Check out these locals flocking to the Moomin Museum to see the special exhibition. I'm Tiffany Wong. Take care and see you next time.
For more stories from Taiwan and We Taiwan, download the TaiwanPlus app. By the way, this is the mascot, Awi.
Thank you for sharing our passion for food and Taiwan. Veggie Island explores the vibrant world of plant-based cuisine.
This is amazing.
While Taiwan on the Rocks uncovers the stories and craftsmanship behind every sip.
Have you ever tried Taiwanese beer?
Are you ready to taste even more of Taiwan?